Welcome, and how glad I am that you are here. Let your body settle now, sinking a little deeper into the warmth beneath you, letting the weight of the day begin to soften and dissolve. Close your eyes gently, and allow your breathing to find its own slow, quiet rhythm. Tonight, as you drift, you will gently come to understand something of the teachings of the Buddha, and you do not need to concentrate at all. You can simply let the words wash over you and let the understanding arrive on its own, like warmth spreading slowly through a quiet room. There is a kind of stillness that lives at the very center of things. Not a stillness you have to reach for, or travel toward, or work to find. A stillness that is simply there, the way the dark is there, when a candle is gently blown out, the way silence is there beneath every sound, patient and unhurried, waiting. The Buddha knew this stillness. He had felt it from the inside, the way you feel a warm room after coming in from the cold, the way a deep breath feels when you finally, truly let it go. And in his gentle way, over many quiet years, he tried to point others toward it, not with force, not with loud or urgent words, but with soft observations, offered slowly, like a hand held out in a dim and peaceful room. Let your shoulders drop a little, if they have not already. Let the muscles of your face grow soft. The teachings of the Buddha begin, very simply, with something he noticed about the nature of the mind. He noticed that the mind is almost always somewhere other than where the body is. The body lies still in a warm bed or sits quietly beneath a tree, while the mind moves restlessly through yesterday and tomorrow, through what was said and what might happen, through worries no bigger than shadows and plans no more solid than clouds. He noticed this, and he was not troubled by it. He did not call the wandering mind a failure or a problem to be punished. He simply saw it for what it was, a habit, old and deeply worn, like a path through grass that has been walked so many times the earth has grown smooth and easy. The mind follows familiar paths, not because it wants to suffer, but because it does not yet know that it is allowed to rest. And so, very gently, the Buddha offered another path. Not a steep or difficult one, a soft one, a slow one, a path that winds through shade and quietness, and does not ask very much of you at all. Only this, to notice where you are, to feel the warmth of the breath as it moves in and out, to let the moment you are in be enough, just as it is, without needing it to be different, without needing it to arrive at anything, without pushing it forward or pulling it back. Let a slow breath leave you now. There is no hurry. There is nowhere at all to be. One of the softest ideas in the Buddha's teaching is the idea that suffering, in its gentlest sense, comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to the way things are. He used a word for this, a gentle word that points to a kind of grasping, a reaching, a holding on. The mind reaches for pleasant things and tries to keep them. The mind pulls away from unpleasant things and tries to push them somewhere out of sight. And in all that reaching and pulling, there is a kind of tension, a low, constant tightening, like a hand that has been clenched for so long it has forgotten how to open. The Buddha's teaching is simply the quiet invitation to unclench, to let the hand fall open, to let what is here be here, and to notice that in the allowing, something in us grows softer and more still. You might feel your own hands now, resting wherever they are. Let them be easy. Let the fingers lie loosely, not reaching for anything, not holding anything, just resting, open and warm, the way hands look when a person is deeply, peacefully asleep. The Buddha spent many years sitting beneath trees, walking slowly along dusty paths between small towns, sitting with people in the early morning, while mist still lay across the fields. He was not always speaking. Often he was simply quiet, and those who sat near him sometimes described that stillness as something almost tangible, something in the air around him that felt like the feeling you get just before sleep arrives, that gentle loosening, that sense of the world growing a little softer at its edges, a little more forgiving, a little less urgent. He carried that stillness not because he was made differently from anyone else, but because he had practiced resting in it, the way you might practice anything quiet and slow, not through effort exactly, but through a kind of patient allowing. And perhaps that is the most comforting thing of all about his teachings. They are not asking you to become someone different. They are not holding up an ideal of a perfect, serene person who never feels tired or tangled or unsure. The Buddha looked at ordinary human experience, at the weariness and the worry and the longing, and he said, with great tenderness, "I see it. I see all of it. And within all of it, there is still space. There is still stillness. You do not have to fix yourself before you can rest. Let your jaw soften now. Let your tongue lie easy at the bottom of your mouth." In the earliest stories of the Buddha's life, before he had understood anything at all, he was a young man who had been raised in comfort, shielded from the harder edges of the world. And then, slowly, the world reached through the gates of his sheltered life, and he saw things he had not been prepared for: age and illness and death, not as distant abstractions, but as real, inevitable, present things. And this seeing did not harden him. It opened something in him instead, a great tenderness, a deep wish to understand not how to escape these things, but how to be at peace within a world where they exist. He wandered for a while, and he sat beneath a tree for a long while, and slowly, in the stillness, something inside him grew quiet enough to hear what had always been there beneath the noise. There is a tree in the old stories, a large and ancient tree, beneath which the Buddha sat on the night of his awakening. You can imagine it if you like. Not a vivid imagining, just a soft one. A tree in the dark, its branches very still, the ground beneath it smooth and cool. A figure sitting quietly, very quietly, not straining, not struggling, but simply resting in awareness, the way a stone rests in water, without needing to go anywhere or do anything at all. Around him, the sounds of the night, insects, a soft wind, the faraway sound of water somewhere. And inside him, a growing stillness, a stillness that was not emptiness, but fullness, of a very quiet kind. You can feel something like that now, perhaps. Not the same, not as vast, only the small and personal version that belongs to you alone, in your warm bed, in your dark and quiet room, your body growing heavier and softer, your mind beginning to slow its familiar wandering, not because it has been stopped or pushed, but because it is simply, gradually, losing interest in going anywhere, resting, letting itself be still. The Buddha talked, in his gentle way, about the nature of the mind using many soft comparisons. Sometimes he compared the untrained mind to water that has been stirred, full of movement, cloudy, unable to reflect clearly, and the trained mind, the resting mind, to water that has been left to settle, growing still of its own accord, growing clear, not because anything has been added to it, but because the stirring has stopped. No effort required, only patience, only the willingness to let the settling happen on its own. That is what is happening now, if you are willing to let it. The water is settling. The thoughts that were moving through you are slowing, the way ripples on a pond slow when the wind has passed, and the surface is left in peace. You are not making this happen. You are only allowing it. There is a difference, and it is a soft and important one. The allowing is everything. The trying is what keeps the water stirred. Let the body be heavy now. Let it sink a little more. There is something beneath you, holding you completely. You do not need to hold yourself up. One of the quieter ideas in the Buddha's teaching, one that sometimes surprises people when they first encounter it, is the idea that the self is not quite what we think it is, not in a frightening way, not in a way that asks you to give anything up or to lose anything you value, but in a gentle, curious, dissolving kind of way, the way ice dissolves into water when the warmth increases, not disappearing, but becoming something softer and more fluid. The Buddha noticed that what we call the self is not a fixed and solid thing. It is more like a river, always moving, always changing, made of different water every moment, yet still recognizably itself, still following its soft and winding course toward the sea. The thoughts that pass through the mind are not you. The feelings that rise and fall are not you. Even the body, warm and heavy now in the bed, this too is something that changes, that breathes and shifts and settles, not quite the fixed thing we sometimes believe it to be. And somehow, when you let yourself feel this, when you let the edges of the self become a little softer and a little less certain, there is not loss, but relief. The great weight of maintaining a very solid self, of defending it and worrying about it and comparing it and protecting it, that weight can simply be set down, the way you might set down something you have been carrying for so long you had forgotten you were carrying it at all. Set it down. Let it rest on the floor beside the bed. You will not need it tonight. The breath comes and the breath goes, in and out. You do not decide to breathe. It happens by itself, quietly, while you think of other things, or while you think of nothing at all. The body knows what it is doing. The body has always known. Long before you learned any words at all, the body knew how to breathe, how to settle into sleep, how to let go. You are not teaching it anything now. You are only remembering something it has always known. The Buddha often returned to the breath. In his teaching on mindfulness, which is perhaps the softest and most practical of all his offerings, he described simply noticing the breath, not changing it, not deepening it artificially or forcing it into any particular shape, only noticing it. Noticing the slight coolness at the entrance of the nose, the gentle rise of the chest or the belly, the long, slow release of air going out again. Just that, just the ordinary, unremarkable, utterly beautiful fact of breathing, happening by itself in the dark. And in that noticing, something extraordinary occurs. Not dramatically, not with any fanfare, but quietly and slowly, the mind finds something to rest upon. The breath becomes an anchor, not a heavy or confining one, but a soft one, like a thread of warm light that leads back from the wandering, back from the worrying, back from the turning and returning of thoughts, back to here, to now, to the body lying still and warm and breathing, to the dark room, to the quiet, to the simple and sufficient fact of being here at all. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing else you need to do. The night is doing what the night does, quietly, without any help from you. The darkness is soft and familiar. The warmth around you is real. The breath is moving in and out, slow and steady, like the tide coming into a very still shore, like the slow pulse of something ancient and unhurried, like the world itself breathing, which in a sense it is, in a sense it always has been. Breath following breath, all the way back to the beginning, all the way forward into a morning that does not need your attention yet. Let the eyes be completely still behind their lids. Let the forehead be smooth. Let the space between the eyebrows soften, spreading gently outward like warmth from a lamp. In the old stories of the places where the Buddha walked and taught, there is often water, rivers, lakes, quiet ponds. Water appears again and again in the imagery of his teaching, as a symbol of something, perhaps of the mind itself, which, like water, takes the shape of whatever contains it, which, like water, is never truly still, but is always in some kind of gentle motion, which, like water, can be turbulent, or glassy, or slow and golden in afternoon light. The Buddha sat beside rivers. He bathed in rivers. He described the mind finding peace, the way a river finds the sea, not by straining or rushing, but by following its own nature, by moving in the direction it was always moving, by allowing the pull of the earth to do what the pull of the earth has always done. You are moving in that direction now, slowly, without effort, the way water moves downhill in the dark, finding the lowest place, finding the place of rest. The mind is growing quieter, the thoughts are growing fewer, and softer, and farther apart. There is more space between them now, more quiet, more of the dark, warm, gentle nothing that is not nothing at all, but rest, true rest, the kind of rest the body knows how to find when the mind finally, softly, agrees to let it. The Buddha's word for this quality of resting awareness, for the gentle, open noticing that does not grasp or push away, was something like wakefulness, but a very particular kind of wakefulness. A wakefulness that is so complete, so soft, and so accepting, that it looks almost like sleep from the outside, and feels, from the inside, like the most natural thing in the world. Not the wakefulness of effort, or alertness, or sharp attention, but the wakefulness of something that has simply stopped fighting, stopped straining, settled, the way sediment settles in a glass of water left to stand in a quiet room, drifting very slowly downward, very gently, without any hurry, without any destination in mind, only the slow, inevitable, beautiful settling toward stillness, toward the clear and undisturbed quiet at the bottom of things. And in that stillness, something remains, something that was always there, underneath the noise and the planning and the remembering and the reaching, something that does not have a name exactly, or whose name does not matter, something warm and steady and very, very old. The Buddha pointed toward it in many different ways over many years of teaching, the way you might point towards something on the horizon that cannot quite be described, only indicated. He used words like peace, like release, like the extinguishing of a flame, but always with a kind of gentleness in the pointing, a kind of acknowledgement that the words themselves are only approximations, only fingers pointing at a moon, that the fingers themselves are not. The moon is there. It has always been there. On the clearest nights, when the mind is quiet enough, you can see it reflected in still water. Let the body grow a little heavier now. Let the back sink a little further into whatever it is resting on. There is no need to hold any shape, no need to arrange anything. The bed receives you. The dark receives you. The night has been waiting patiently, and it is in no hurry at all. One of the softest of the Buddha's teachings is the one about compassion. Not compassion as a dramatic or demanding emotion. Not compassion as something that requires great effort or sacrifice, but compassion in its quietest and most ordinary form. A quality of warmth, like a lamp left burning in a window. A quality of turning toward, rather than away. In the old texts, this quality is described with a word that is sometimes translated as loving kindness. A phrase that sounds perhaps a little formal in English, but points towards something very simple, very gentle, very natural. It is the warmth you feel towards someone you love who is sleeping. The wish that they rest well, that they be peaceful, that no harm come to them in the night, that the morning, when it arrives, finds them restored. The Buddha taught that this warmth could be extended in all directions, like light from a lamp, to those you love most easily, and then slowly, softly outward, to those you know less well, to strangers, to the whole of the sleeping world. And there is something in that image, the warmth spreading outward in all directions, while the one who holds it grows softer and warmer too, like a fire that is not diminished by the light it gives. Something in that image that feels very close to what happens in the body just before sleep arrives. A kind of release of boundaries, a kind of softening of the edges of the self. The sense that you are not separate from the warmth and the dark, but woven into it, part of it, held by it. You are held. The night is holding you. The quiet is holding you. You do not have to hold yourself so tightly anymore. There is a kind of teaching in the Buddha's tradition that was passed not through words but through silence, through sitting together in the same quiet, through the shared experience of turning the attention gently inward and finding something there that words had never quite been able to say. The Buddha himself spent long periods in silence, not the strained silence of someone who has nothing to say, but the full and resting silence of someone who has found that most of what needs to be understood can only be understood when the talking stops, when the seeking stops, when the endless explaining and interpreting and arranging of experience into stories comes, at least for a little while, to a soft and natural end. This is not a silence that has to be achieved. It is not something you have to work toward or prepare yourself for. It is simply what is left when the noise settles, and the noise does settle. It always settles eventually, the way the sound of a bell settles, the tone growing longer and thinner and quieter, until it is barely distinguishable from the air itself, until you are no longer quite sure whether you are still hearing it or only remembering the hearing of it. And then even that gentle uncertainty dissolves, and there is only the warm and open quiet. The mind is doing something like that now, growing quieter by degrees so small they are barely perceptible, each thought a little softer than the last, each breath a little more effortless, the spaces between thoughts a little wider, a little more restful. You do not have to count them or measure them or do anything at all with them. They are happening by themselves, the way so many things happen by themselves in this dark and quiet hour, the way the body heals by itself in sleep, the way memory sorts itself in dreams, the way everything you learn today is quietly, gently settling into its right place, without any help from you, while you rest, while you breathe, while you let the night do what the night does, so gently and so well. There is a teaching about the nature of things that the Buddha returned to many times, in many different places and circumstances, and it goes something like this. Everything that arises also passes. Everything that comes also goes. The pleasant feeling and the unpleasant feeling, the moment of great beauty and the moment of difficulty, The thought that seemed so important, and the thought that seemed so trivial. All of it arises and passes, like weather moving through a wide and open sky. The sky itself is unchanged. The sky does not become the clouds. The sky holds the clouds for a time, and then the clouds move on, and the sky remains, unchanged and open and still. You are something like that sky. Underneath all the weather of the day, underneath the thoughts and the feelings and the small urgencies and the fading concerns, there is something that has simply been here, watching, resting, unchanged, spacious and quiet and very, very patient. That is what you are returning to now. Not going somewhere new, returning. The way you return to your own bed after a long time away and feel the particular rightness of that familiar warmth, that familiar dark, that familiar sense of being exactly where you are meant to be. Somewhere outside, the night continues in its slow and unremarkable way. If there are sounds, they are the sounds of the world going quietly about its business. A distant sound, muffled by walls and distance, softened by the night itself, which softens everything it touches. The wind, perhaps, moving through something. The occasional sound of the building settling, or of the street at rest, or of nothing at all, just the faint and gentle hum of existence, which has no sharp edges at this hour, only a soft and continuous gentleness. The Buddha taught in groves, in gardens, in the open air beneath trees. He taught at the edge of rivers, and in rooms where lamps were burning low, and perhaps the teaching was as much in those settings as in the words themselves. Perhaps the dappled light coming through leaves, the sound of water nearby, the warmth of the afternoon giving way slowly to the cooler, gentler evening. Perhaps all of that was part of the teaching too, the body being told, gently and without words, that it is safe, that it can relax, that the world in this moment is soft, and the ground is solid, and the air is warm, and there is nowhere that requires running toward or away from. Just here, just this, just the breath, and the warmth, and the quiet, and the very gentle, unassuming, beautiful fact of being alive in this moment, without needing it to be any different than it is. There is so much peace available in that, in the simple willingness to let this moment be as it is, without asking it to hurry up or slow down, or be other than it is. The moment is already exactly the right length, already exactly the right temperature, already holding exactly what it needs to hold, which is only you, resting, breathing, sinking very slowly and very willingly into the softest edges of sleep. The heaviness you feel is not the heaviness of burden. It is a different kind of heaviness entirely. It is the heaviness of something laid gently down, the heaviness of a long breath released, the heaviness of the body remembering that it is allowed to stop holding itself up, that gravity is gentle, and the bed is there, and the night is long, and there is nothing that requires the muscles to stay ready. The shoulders can soften, the hands can open very slightly. The jaw, if it has been holding anything at all, can soften too, the teeth parting just the smallest distance, the way a door settles open when there is no longer anyone pressing it closed. The Buddha's teachings at their deepest are not about acquiring anything. They are about releasing. They are about the slow and gentle recognition that what you have been searching for was never somewhere else, was never behind some door you had not yet found the key to, was here, always here, in the ordinary warmth of the breath, in the unremarkable and sufficient quiet of a room where nothing is happening, in the body that is breathing without being asked to, in the heart that is beating without being tended, in the awareness that is here, noticing, warm and open and still, like a lamp that has been burning quietly all along in a room you forgot to look in. You are in that room now. You have always been in that room. The searching is resting. The questions are resting. The part of you that has been turning things over in the half-dark, trying to work something out or remember something or prepare for something, that part is growing very still now, very soft, like a hand that has been clenched gradually unclenching, finger by finger, so slowly you might not have noticed it happening until the hand is simply open, simply resting, palm upward, soft and warm and asking for nothing. There is a metaphor in the teachings for the way the mind moves before it finds rest. It is compared to a monkey swinging through trees, grabbing one branch and then another, never quite settling, always moving toward the next thing before it has finished with the present thing. It is not a judgment. The Buddha spoke of it gently, the way you might speak of something perfectly natural that simply has not yet been given a reason to stop. And when the reason comes, not through force, not through scolding, but through something more like warmth, more like the offer of a soft place to rest, the movement slows. The swinging slows. The branches are still for a moment, and the stillness, once found, is recognized immediately, as if some part of the mind had always known that this was what it wanted, had always been moving in the direction of this quiet, without quite knowing what it was moving toward. That is what is happening now, in this room, in this dark, in this breath. The movement is slowing, the reaching is softening. Something that had been mid-swing is settling very gently onto a branch that is wide and warm and perfectly still, and sitting there, and feeling the quiet, and not needing to swing again just yet. Not tonight. Tonight there is only the branch, and the warmth, and the slow and deepening dark, and the breath moving in and moving out, like something very ancient and very gentle, like a tide that has been coming and going since long before there were any words for it at all, in and out, while the mind grows quieter still, and the thoughts grow farther apart, each one softer and slower than the one before, and the spaces between them grow warm and wide and very, very deep, and there is nothing in the spaces but warmth, and the warmth is enough, and the enough is everything, and the everything asks nothing of you at all. There is a word in the old teachings, a word that has been passed from voice to voice across many quiet centuries, and the word is equanimity. It is a long word for a very simple feeling, the feeling of a lake on a morning with no wind, the feeling of the air inside a room where everything has been still for a long time. It is not distance, not coldness, not the kind of stillness that comes from not caring. It is something much warmer than that. It is the stillness that comes from caring so completely and so gently that there is no longer any grasping in the caring, no longer any clutching or leaning or strain, just an open hand, just a soft and willing presence that meets whatever arrives with the same unhurried, untroubled quiet. The Buddha spoke of equanimity as one of 4 great qualities of the heart. 4 soft flowers, the teachers sometimes said, that bloom in a heart that has learned to be still. And they are not rare flowers, not flowers that grow only in high and difficult places. They are ordinary flowers, quiet flowers, the kind that grow at the edges of paths that have been walked for a long time by people who were not in a hurry. And perhaps you have felt one or another of them, in small ways, in quiet moments, without knowing what to call it. The warmth you feel when someone near you is at ease, the gentle softening in the chest when something difficult passes without harm, the very slight opening of the hands when a long effort is finally complete. These are the flowers, these ordinary, nameless feelings. The teachings simply gave them names, so that they could be recognized, the way you might name a bird that has been visiting your window for some time without your ever knowing what it was. The naming does not change the bird. The bird was always there, but something settles in the knowing, something rests, and the next time the bird arrives you greet it with a kind of quiet recognition, a softness that was not there before. And that is perhaps the gentlest thing about these teachings. They do not ask you to build anything you do not already have. They ask only that you recognize what has always been there, beneath the movement and the noise and the searching. The capacity for stillness, the capacity for warmth, the capacity for a kind of knowing that does not require thinking, a kind of rest that does not require sleep, though sleep is coming now, softly, the way everything soft comes, without announcement, without hurry, settling over the mind the way a light blanket settles over the body when someone kind has noticed you are cold. The breath is still moving. You may have almost forgotten it, and that forgetting is itself a kind of peace. The breath does not need to be remembered. It was always going to continue. It has been continuing for the whole of your life, patient and slow and thoroughly unconcerned with whether it was being noticed or not. In and out, in and out. Each breath, a small and perfect completion. Each exhale, a tiny releasing, a tiny softening, the body giving something back to the room, to the air, to the quiet. The old teachers compared the breath to a thread that runs through every moment, the one continuous thing that is always available to return to when the mind has wandered far into its stories and its plans and its worries about things that have not happened yet, and things that happened long ago. The thread is always there, warm and steady and very close, and returning to it is not a failure, not an admission that something went wrong. It is simply the most natural movement in the world. The mind moves away, and then the mind comes back. The way a bird lifts from a branch and then settles again. The way water disturbed by a stone grows still again, on its own, without effort, simply because stillness is what water returns to when nothing is pushing it otherwise. And tonight, nothing is pushing. The room is quiet. The dark is soft. The body is warm and very heavy in the kindest, slowest way, sinking a little further with each breath out, as if the bed is gently, willingly, receiving more and more of the weight you have been carrying, asking for it, glad to take it. The bed does not mind. The night does not mind. There is no one keeping count of how much has been laid down, or how long it takes to lay it down. There is only the slow process of it, which is already happening, has already been happening for some time, the muscles softening one by one in ways too subtle to name, the thoughts drifting further apart, the awareness growing gentler and more diffuse, like a light that is slowly being turned down by a careful and very unhurried hand. There is a teaching about impermanence that is very often spoken of as though it were a solemn thing, a thing to sit with seriously and with some weight. And it carries weight, it is true. But there is another way of holding it, a softer way, a way that the very old teachers sometimes pointed toward in the quietest of their words. The impermanence of everything includes the impermanence of difficulty, the impermanence of worry, the impermanence of the feeling that something must be done right now, that something is not as it should be, that there is a problem requiring the full attention of the mind at this very hour. All of that is impermanent too. All of that is already passing, the way everything passes, slowly and without drama, the way the warmth of a summer afternoon passes into the long and very gentle evening, and the evening passes into the dark, and the dark is here now, soft and complete. And in the dark there is no urgency left, because the dark has already arrived, and it is not frightening. It is only quiet and warm and wide enough to hold everything, which is another way of saying wide enough that nothing is crowded, wide enough that there is room for the body to expand a little with each breath in and soften a little more with each breath out, room for the thoughts to spread out and lose their edges, room for the mind to do what it has been wanting to do for a long time, which is simply to rest, simply to be still, simply to let the night do what the night does, without any assistance from the part of you that has been trying so hard for so long. The Buddha is said to have spoken sometimes from under trees, great spreading trees whose roots went very deep, and whose branches went very wide, and whose shade was cool and still on even the warmest afternoon. There is something in the image that settles easily in the mind, or perhaps it settles more easily now than it might have earlier, when the mind was moving faster. A tree, the shade of a tree, the ground beneath the tree, which is soft and warm and holds the shape of everything that has ever rested on it, and sitting there, or lying there, beneath the wide and motionless branches, with the light coming through in pieces, soft pieces, not sharp, just gentle patterns of warmth and coolness that shift so slowly, they are more like breathing than like movement. Sitting there would be no requirement to speak or to understand or to follow anything. The teachings would arrive not as words, but as the quality of the air itself, the quality of the stillness, the quality of the light that asks nothing of the eye but to receive it gently, without effort, the way the eye receives light when it is half closed, and the world has gone soft, and the distinction between looking and not looking has grown very small, so small as to be almost nothing, almost a question without an answer, almost a breath halfway between in and out, suspended very lightly in the warm and unhurried dark. The mind that is finding its way towards sleep is doing something the teachings also point toward, quietly, in their most gentle passages. It is releasing its grip on the story it tells about itself, the story of who it is, and what it needs, and what it is worried about, and what it hopes for, and what it is trying to remember, and what it must not forget. That story, which is very often gripped quite tightly, is loosening now, the way everything loosens when the night is deep enough, and the warmth is steady enough, and the body has been lying still long enough that the stillness has begun to feel natural, has begun to feel like the default, like the thing that has always been waiting underneath the movement, patient and very quiet, the way deep water is patient and very quiet beneath the surface, where the wind plays and the light dances. Beneath the surface, it is always still. That is not a metaphor for something complicated. It is perhaps the simplest possible teaching, that beneath the movement of the mind, beneath the thoughts and the worries and the plans and the small, restless urgencies of an ordinary day, there is something that does not move, something that has not been disturbed by any of it, the way the deep bed of a river is not disturbed by what moves at the surface, and you do not need to reach it. You do not need to dive down toward it or work your way through layers of something difficult to find it. It finds you, in moments like this one, when the surface has grown quiet enough, when the wind has stopped, when the thoughts have drifted far enough apart, that the stillness between them is more present than the thoughts themselves, more present and more warm and more wide, and what you are resting in, right now, is very close to that, very close to the stillness that was always there, that needed nothing from you except the willingness to be very quiet, to be very still, to let the night hold you the way deep water holds everything that rests on its surface, effortlessly, completely, without asking anything in return. There is a softness that comes just before sleep that is unlike any other softness in the day. The body has known it many times, though the mind is usually not awake enough to notice it when it arrives. It is the softness of the last few moments of holding on, the softness of the fingers opening, the softness of the breath that does not quite return to its previous depth after the exhale, the breath that seems to pause for a moment, very gently, in the warm air between one world and the one that waits just beneath it, still and dark and full of something that is not quite nothing, something that is more like rest than like anything else, more like warmth than like anything else, more like the feeling of being held by something that has no name and asks no questions, and has been waiting all along, patiently, the way the night waits, the way the dark waits, with no impatience at all, with nothing but room, nothing but soft and open room for whatever arrives. The teaching of compassion, which is another of those quiet flowers, is sometimes spoken of as the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. But in its most intimate form, in the form that is most immediately available, it begins much closer than all beings. It begins with the one who is here, in this room, in this body, in this very moment. The compassion that says, you have worked hard today, you have carried things, you have tried, and now the carrying can stop, and the trying can stop, and there is nothing left to do except breathe and soften and allow the night to be as large as it is, which is very large, large enough to hold every thought you have not yet finished thinking, every question you have not yet finished asking, without any of them needing to be resolved before the eyes close, and the breath slows, and the body goes somewhere quiet that the waking mind does not follow. That is the permission, not given from outside, not given by any teaching or any teacher, but recognized, slowly, from somewhere inside, from the place that has always known it was allowed to rest, but has sometimes needed a long and quiet evening, and a soft voice, and the weight of the dark, and the warmth of the breath to remember. And you are remembering now. Something in you is remembering now, not with effort, not with thought, but with the body, with the slow and settling weight of the body, with the opening of the hands, with the loosening of the place between the shoulder blades where so much is carried so quietly for so long, with the softening of the face, the forehead, the small muscles around the eyes that hold a kind of readiness all day long and are now, very slowly and with great relief, releasing it, releasing the readiness, releasing the vigilance, the lovely and exhausting vigilance, and settling into something that needs no name, only this, only the warmth, only the dark, only the breath, only the stillness that is here and has always been here and will be here long after the last thought has drifted away into the warm and open dark that receives everything and returns everything as stillness, as rest, as the simple and unhurried fact of being alive without needing to do anything with it, without needing to make anything of it, the way a candle flame simply burns without trying to illuminate, without meaning to cast warmth, simply doing the one quiet thing it was made to do, and in the doing of it, warmth and light arrive on their own, effortlessly, The way sleep arrives when the conditions are gentle enough, when the room is dark enough, when the body is tired enough, when the mind has finally agreed, very softly, to set down what it was holding and come and rest here, in this place that has no edges, in this feeling that has no name more precise than peace, more name than simply this, simply now, simply the breath, moving in the slow and ancient way it has always moved, long before there were thoughts to accompany it, long before there were words for what it meant to be breathing in the dark, with nowhere to go and nothing to become. The Buddha spoke, in his quiet way, of something he called the middle way, and like all of his teachings, it is both simpler and more profound than it first seems. The way a still pond is simple on its surface, and yet contains within it entire worlds of depth and shadow and soft movement. The middle way was not a compromise, not the finding of a careful point between two extremes, in the way a measuring instrument finds a midpoint with precision and effort. It was something more like the recognition that strain in any direction, strain toward pleasure, or strain away from it, strain toward perfection, or strain against oneself, strain toward the future, or strain against the present. All of that straining is the source of the very exhaustion it is trying to resolve. The middle way was the discovery that the thing the heart has been looking for is not at either end of any road. It is here, in the place where the walking slows and the searching softens, and the traveler finally sits down, not from defeat, but from a kind of wisdom, from the recognition that the sitting is the arrival, that this, right here, the breath and the body and the quiet, is the destination that all the searching was circling without knowing it. And perhaps that is what this evening is, in its own soft way, the sitting down, the recognition, the body that has carried itself through the long corridor of another day and has arrived, at last, at the one place it was always going, which is here, which is rest, which is the warm dark of the night and the weight of the blanket and the slow loosening of everything that was held tight, for reasons that were real and important, and that have now been set very gently at the door, the way you set your coat down when you come inside, not thrown away, not forgotten, only set down, because inside the house is warm and you do not need it here. Not tonight, not in this quiet room where the breath comes and goes on its own and the body knows exactly what to do without being told. Let the jaw soften a little more if it is willing. Let the tongue rest. Let the small and faithful muscles of the face release whatever expression they have been holding, because there is no expression needed here, no face to present to anyone, no readiness required, only the plain and simple fact of the face at rest, which is its most honest and its most ancient form, the face that was there before the learning of faces, the face that is there now in the dark, held by the pillow, breathing, warm, belonging entirely to itself and to the night. The teaching of impermanence, anicca, which is perhaps the most foundational of all the Buddha's gentle observations, is sometimes received as a sorrowful teaching, and there is a tenderness in it, it is true, a tenderness around the edges of everything it touches, because it touches everything, every moment, every face, every feeling, every season, every warmth. And yet in this quiet hour, impermanence becomes something other than sorrow. It becomes the very reason that this moment is as full as it is. This breath, which will not come again in exactly this way. This darkness, which is entirely its own. This particular softness of the body as it settles. This particular quality of the quiet in this room, which exists only now and will never exist in precisely this way again. Impermanence does not diminish it. Impermanence is what makes it real, what makes it present, what makes it something other than an idea, because an idea can be repeated, carried forward, retrieved from memory and examined again later. But this warmth, this breath, this exact feeling of the body sinking very slowly into the bed, this cannot be retrieved. It can only be inhabited, and you are inhabiting it now, with no effort, simply by being here, simply by being the warm and breathing thing that you are in the dark. And there is something restful about that, about impermanence understood in this soft way. Because if everything is passing, then the thoughts that were so insistent earlier in the day are also passing, have in fact already passed, are already further away than they were a few moments ago, and the moments themselves are passing, each one complete and then released, And there is something in the continuous releasing of the moments that begins, after a while, to feel like a kind of breathing, the way the whole night breathes, the way the world breathes in and out of each hour, without holding any of them, without needing to, because there will always be another hour, another quiet, another darkness soft enough to rest in. In the tradition that grew slowly in the gentle shade of the Buddha's teaching, there is a practice called metta, which translates softly into something like loving kindness, though even that phrase, beautiful as it is only a finger pointing at the moon, and not the moon itself. Metta is more like a quality of warmth that is extended outward from the center of the self, slowly, the way warmth extends from a small fire, not directed with effort or aim, but simply radiating, the way warmth does, in all directions at once, without choosing. And the practice, in its most intimate form, begins not with the world, not with distant others or difficult strangers, or the wide family of all living beings, but with the self, with this breathing body, with this tired and faithful heart that has been doing its best in all the ways it knows how, and sometimes falling short of that best, and then trying again, and then falling short again, and then trying again, because that is what the heart does. That is what this ordinary and remarkable life is made of, the trying, and the rest between the trying, and the warmth that it is still possible to offer to oneself in the moments of rest, the simple warmth of recognizing that you are here, that you are breathing, that you have made it to another evening, that the night is around you and the bed is beneath you, and nothing is required of you now except to be very gently present in the warmth of your own being, the way a candle is present in its own light, quietly, without going anywhere. That warmth does not have to be earned. That is perhaps the most quietly radical thing in all of it, the recognition that the warmth is not a reward for having done enough, for having been good enough, for having resolved enough of the unfinished things. The warmth is simply available, the way the night is simply available, the way the breath is simply available, arriving without conditions, asking only that the body be willing to receive it, and the body, lying here in the dark, is more than willing. The body is already receiving it, has already been receiving it. The warmth of the blood moving softly through its slow and faithful channels, the warmth of the breath in the chest, the warmth of the blanket, the warmth that is the body itself, simply alive, simply here, simply resting in the fact of its own warmth in the dark. There is another word that moves through the tradition like slow water through stones, and the word is equanimity. Though even saying it slowly, even letting the word dissolve in the mind, the way a soft sound dissolves in a quiet room, begins to carry something of what it points toward. Equanimity is not indifference. It does not mean that nothing matters, or that the heart has grown smooth and unreachable. It means something more like balance, but balance that is alive, balance that breathes, the kind of balance that a tree has, rooted deeply enough that the wind can move through its branches without threatening the roots. The kind of balance that allows the surface of things to move as they will without the deep places being pulled out of their stillness. And this, too, is something that does not need to be constructed. It does not need to be achieved through effort. It is found, very gently, in moments like this one, when the body is still, and the thoughts are slow, and the breath is moving in its own quiet way, and nothing is being asked of the deep places, nothing is being demanded of the roots, and they are simply there, warm and dark and very still, the way roots always are in the dark beneath everything. Let the shoulders settle a little more into the warmth beneath them. There is no hurry. There has never been any hurry, though the day sometimes forgot this. And that is all right, because the night always remembers. The night always knows that there is enough time, that the hours of darkness are long and generous, and will not be shortened by anything that worries. And in that long and generous dark, the mind begins to do what it does when it is given enough room and enough quiet. It begins to soften, to unspool, to release the careful order it keeps during the day, to let the thoughts wander a little further from their usual paths, until they are wandering somewhere that is not quite thought at all, somewhere that is closer to the feeling of thought than to thought itself, the warm impression that something was being considered, the soft remainder of a question that has already lost its urgency, the shape of a word without the word, and then even that, very slowly, drifting further, becoming less like the shape of a word and more like the feeling of the dark, which is large and soft and has no shape at all. The Buddha sat beneath a tree. That is the story. And like all good stories, it is true, in ways that are larger than the facts it carries. He sat, and he breathed, and the night came around him, and he did not try to stop the thoughts that came, but he did not follow them either. He let them come and he let them go, the way you watch clouds move across a dark sky, without reaching up to hold them, without needing them to stay or needing them to leave, simply watching, simply breathing, simply being the one who is sitting quietly underneath the moving sky, rooted, warm, still. And in that stillness, in that long and patient sitting, something opened, very slowly, the way a flower opens, not through effort, but through the simple maturation of its own quiet readiness. You do not need to sit beneath a tree. You are already still. You are already in the posture of arrival, horizontal, breathing, the whole length of the body given over to rest. The body that has walked and worked and carried and reached and held and let go all through the long corridor of the day, now given entirely to the horizontal, to the flat and restful fact of the bed, which is its own kind of ground, its own kind of earth, dark and warm and receiving. The breath is slower now. Perhaps you have noticed, or perhaps you have not needed to notice. Perhaps the body has simply been doing what bodies do in the dark, slowing, deepening, finding its own way to the rhythm that belongs to rest and not to waking, the rhythm that is slightly longer than you expect on the exhale, the rhythm that seems to have a little more weight to it, a little more willingness to let the air go completely before the next breath arrives. And in that small pause, in that tiny space between the breath that leaves and the breath that comes, there is something that is very close to the thing the teachings have been pointing toward all along, a moment of pure release, of pure rest, of pure not holding, in which nothing is being maintained and nothing is being guarded, and the body simply floats. Very gently, in the warm and open dark, a pause between tides, a breath between notes, in a very slow and quiet piece of music that has no need to resolve itself into a conclusion, that is content simply to continue, note by note, breath by breath, each one arriving in its own time and departing in its own time, and leaving behind only the faint warmth of its having been there at all. There is a teaching that speaks of the nature of the mind as being like the surface of a deep lake, not a small lake, but a very large one, the kind whose far shore you cannot quite see in the soft light, the kind that holds a certain quality of silence that is different from the silence of a room or a forest, a silence that is wide and open and seems to have depth to it, seems to go down as far as the water goes down, which is very far. On the surface of this lake, there are ripples. There are always ripples. Wind moves across the water, and the surface responds, the way the mind responds to the events of the day, to a sound, to a memory, to a feeling passing through. And when you look at the surface, when you watch the ripples moving, it can seem as though the whole lake is nothing but movement, nothing but restlessness, nothing but the constant rearrangement of small waves. But the teaching asks you, very gently, to remember the depth, to remember that beneath all that surface movement, the water is still, completely still, undisturbed. The deepest water of the lake has never moved in the way the surface moves. It rests in its own darkness, cool and quiet, holding the weight of all that is above it without effort, the way deep things hold things, simply by being what they are, simply by being deep. And this, the teaching says, is the nature of what you are beneath the thoughts, beneath the ripples of the day's concerns, beneath the last few worries that are still moving slowly across the surface of the mind, like small winds that have not yet finished. Beneath all of that, there is something that is like the deep water, something that has not been disturbed, something that has been resting all along in its own stillness, waiting, patient, cool and dark, and very calm, the way the bottom of a lake waits while the surface goes about its business of reflecting and rippling and catching light. You do not need to find your way down there. The finding has already happened. You are already descending, very slowly, the way a leaf that has come to rest on the surface of still water eventually, softly, begins to sink, not falling, not rushing, but drifting downward through the clear and quiet water, with no resistance at all, turning very slowly, carried by nothing more than the gentle agreement between its own small weight and the water that receives it, the slow and inevitable arrival at a deeper place, A quieter place, a darker and warmer place, where the surface is very far above and very small, and the only sound is the sound that deep water makes, which is the sound of no sound, of a silence so complete it feels like a soft pressure, like the feeling of being held from every direction at once by something that means you no good harm, something that is simply there, simply holding. The tradition speaks often of compassion. The word in the old language carries within it a sense of trembling, of the heart that trembles in the presence of suffering, the way a string trembles when a nearby string is plucked, the resonance of one thing with another, the way kindness is not a decision so much as a recognition, a noticing that the person in front of you is carrying something, as you are carrying something, as everyone is carrying something, and that this carrying is the common ground beneath all the differences, the shared warmth of the burden that living involves, the soft weight of being here at all. And compassion toward oneself is perhaps the quietest and most important of its forms. The way the tired body deserves kindness, the way the mind that has been busy and careful and watchful all through the day deserves, at the end of all that, to be given this, to be given the dark and the warmth and the slowness, to be told in the wordless language of a soft pillow and a gentle weight of blanket that it has done enough, that the day is finished, that whatever was not resolved will still be there in the morning if it needs to be, that nothing is required of the mind now except this, only this, the soft and generous act of letting itself be still, of letting itself drift, of giving up for now the task of being a mind that knows things and does things and holds things together, and simply becoming, for these hours, a mind that is resting, a mind that is dark, a mind that is moving very slowly toward the place where minds go when they are at last allowed to stop, the warm and wordless country of sleep, which is not an absence but a presence, a soft and enveloping presence that the body recognizes before the mind does, that the breath recognizes before the thoughts do, arriving first in the heaviness of the limbs, then in the slight drooping of the jaw, then in the way the thoughts begin to lose their edges, to blur at the corners the way lights blur in soft rain, the familiar shape of a thought becoming something rounder and less definite, something more like a color than a word, more like a temperature than an idea. There is a gentleness in the teachings that is easy to miss if you are reading them too quickly. But in a moment like this one, when the reading is done, and the day is done, and the body is horizontal, and the room is dark and quiet, the gentleness is the thing that rises to the surface, the thing that remains when everything else has been set aside. The gentle reminder that you are not required to be anything other than what you are, that the practice is not a performance, that the stillness you are moving toward right now is not something you earn by getting everything right, not a reward for perfect attention or pure thought, but simply the natural condition of a body that has been given the gift of rest, the natural condition of a mind that has been given enough room and enough dark to do what it most deeply wants to do, which is to slow and to soften and to come to rest, and to let the careful architecture of the waking self dissolve very gently, the way a sandcastle dissolves when the tide comes slowly in, not with violence, not with any force, but with the patient and unhurried persistence of the water, which has all the time there is and needs none of it. The tide, the slow tide coming in. There is something in that image that the body understands without needing the mind to explain it. Something in the rhythm of the tide that matches the rhythm the body is already falling into. The long exhale, like the water drawing back over the sand. The slight pause. The soft inhale, like the water gathering itself. And then the slow forward movement again. The water coming in, slightly further each time. Each wave a little warmer than the last, a little heavier, a little more inclined to stay, a little less inclined to go back. The way sleep comes in like that, like a tide. Each wave of drowsiness reaching a little further into the waking mind, and then retreating a little less than it came, so that with each soft wave there is a little less of the shore that is still dry, a little more of it covered in the warm and quiet water of sleep, the mind becoming, very slowly, more water than shore, more depth than surface, more dark than lit, more still than moving, more gone than here, drifting further from the lit and busy country of waking, with each breath, a small boat moving further from the shore, and the shore growing smaller behind it, the lights of the shore growing dimmer and softer and further away, and the water all around the small boat growing darker and warmer and stiller, and the boat itself growing heavier and slower, settling lower in the water, not sinking, but resting on the water's surface, as a very heavy thing rests, deeply, the hull against the water, feeling like the body against the bed, the same soft resistance, the same complete and generous support from beneath. The teachings speak of a kind of knowing that is not like ordinary knowing, not like the knowing that requires effort and attention and the gathering of facts. They speak of a knowing that arises on its own, without being summoned, the way warmth arises in a room that has been gradually heating through the afternoon without anyone noticing. And then at some point, the warmth is simply there, present, undeniable, and no one can say exactly when it arrived, because it arrived in such small increments that each one was invisible. This kind of knowing is closer to recognizing than to learning. It is the feeling of having always known something, and having simply, in a particular quiet moment, remembered it, the way you sometimes remember a word that you could not find for hours. And when it comes without effort, and with a sense not of discovery, but of return, of finding again what was always yours, what never left, but simply waited in the soft silence at the back of things, for the right moment of quiet to be heard. And perhaps that is what these long and gentle nights are for, not for learning, not for achieving, but for remembering, for letting the quiet grow large enough that what was always there becomes audible, the deep warmth that has been there beneath everything, the stillness that has never been threatened, not really, not in the deepest places, no matter how the surface moved, the patience of the body, which knows exactly what it needs and, when allowed, moves toward it with a slow and undeviating certainty, the way water moves downhill, not deciding, not choosing, simply following what is deepest, what is lowest, what is most at rest. Something is releasing very slowly in the chest, in the way the breath settles, in the way the thoughts that have been drifting through the last few minutes have been growing softer and further apart, the way sounds grow softer and further apart late at night, when the last few cars have passed, and the silence between them grows longer, and the sounds themselves grow less distinct, less sharp, less like sounds and more like the memory of sounds. And then the memory too softens and becomes something that is not quite memory, something that is not quite anything, a soft and indeterminate warmth at the very edge of meaning, where meaning has not yet let go, but has grown very loose, very open, willing to dissolve. There is no effort needed here. There is only the breath, which is already doing everything it needs to do. There is only the weight of the body, which is already everywhere it needs to be. There is only the dark, which is already as dark as it will be, already as quiet as it will be, already as complete as it will be. There is nothing to wait for. There is nothing to arrive. Everything that the night can offer has already been offered, and the body has already begun to receive it, is already receiving it, in the slow deepening of the breath, in the heaviness of the eyes that are already closed, in the loosening of the jaw, that perhaps happened so slowly there was no moment to notice it, in the feeling of the hands, which are soft now, which have let go of whatever they were holding, not choosing to let go but simply finding, at some point in the long and gentle drift of the last little while, that there was nothing left worth holding, that the holding had become, without any drama, unnecessary, and the hands had opened the way hands open in sleep, not relaxed exactly but released, returned to their own natural shape, which is softer than you might expect, slightly cupped, as though even in the deepest rest they remember the shape of holding something warm and round and beloved, a bowl of warmth, a soft enclosed space, a bowl of warmth, a soft enclosed space. And this shape of the hands, this small and gentle cupping, is itself a kind of teaching, a kind of wisdom that the body has carried without being told, the wisdom that says there is always something worth cradling gently, always something that deserves that soft enclosure, that careful and unhurried holding, even if what is held is only the warmth of the air itself, the warmth that the hands have made simply by being close together, the warmth that arises between things that rest near one another for long enough, which is itself a kind of love, perhaps, a kind of the most ancient and uncomplicated love, The love that is not a feeling exactly, but a condition. The way warmth is a condition. The way quiet is a condition. Something the world falls into when the other things have softened and stepped aside. The teachings say that beneath all of the movement, beneath all of the reaching and the wanting and the turning away, there is something that has never moved. A ground that is not a ground you can stand on, but a ground you can be. A stillness that is not the absence of motion, but something older than motion, something that was present before the first movement, and will be present when the last movement has settled, and the last ripple has smoothed itself back into the surface of things. The teachers sometimes called this the unborn, which is a strange and quiet word, and it does not mean anything frightening or difficult. It only means something that was never made, and so was never unmade. Something that preceded the making of things, and will outlast the unmaking of things. The way darkness precedes light, and will outlast it. The way silence underlies sound, and is there again the moment the sound ends. The way the sky is there behind every cloud, unchanged, untroubled, having never argued with the weather. And lying here now, in the dark, with the body growing heavier and the breath growing slower, perhaps you can feel something of this, not as an idea but as a sensation, as a quality of the darkness itself. The sense that the dark is not empty but full, not absence but presence, a soft and undifferentiated presence that asks nothing and holds everything, the way a very deep lake holds everything that falls into it without changing, without minding, without record, the stone falling through the dark water and settling into the soft sediment at the bottom, and the lake closing over it as though nothing happened, as though the stone had always been there, which perhaps in some sense it had, which perhaps in some sense everything has always been exactly where it is, and the arriving is simply the recognition of a belonging that was never in question. The breath moves in, and the breath moves out, and somewhere in between the two there is a place that is neither, a small suspended moment that belongs to no direction, a pause that is not held but simply present, the way a pendulum is present at the very top of its arc before it turns, before it commits to the returning, and in that pause there is no falling and no rising, there is only the pause itself, which is complete, which needs nothing, which is as whole as anything has ever been, and this pause is always there, every breath, every time, a small door that is always open, a small window through which the stillness outside and the stillness inside are for a moment the same stillness, continuous, undivided, the stillness that the teachings call home. The mind has been growing quieter for some time now. You may not have noticed it happening, because it has been happening the way dusk happens, not all at once but in a slow and continuous softening, the sky not going dark but releasing its brightness in such small amounts that no single moment felt like a change. And yet here the darkness is, complete and gentle and entirely itself, as though it arrived from nowhere and from everywhere at once, as though it was always almost here. The thoughts that were moving through some time ago, those quiet thoughts that arrived like small clouds and moved through the open sky of the mind, those thoughts are further apart now, and the spaces between them have grown so wide and so warm that it is the space, not the thought, that feels like the main thing, the space that feels like the home, the thought merely passing through it, like a bird passing through a very large and quiet sky, leaving no trace, leaving the sky exactly as it was, open and dark and patient and enormous. This is what the teachings describe when they speak of the mind's natural state, not a blank emptiness, but a spacious warmth, not a nothingness, but a fullness, so complete it has no edges, no features to catch the attention, no corners for the small worrying mind to grip. It is the mind that has returned to its own temperature, the way a room returns to its own temperature after the windows have been open and then gently closed, the outside air folding back into the inside air until they are indistinguishable, until the room is simply warm again, as it always was. Beneath the brief coolness of the open window, beneath the brief sharpness of the air that came in and then was absorbed and became part of the room's own warmth, the warmth that was never really lost, only temporarily layered over, temporarily cooled at the surface, while remaining warm at the depth. The depth of the body in the bed, the depth of the dark behind the eyes, the depth of the breath which goes further in than it seems to when you pay attention to it, which opens something inside the chest, that is larger than the chest, a softness that seems to have no flaw. Let a slow breath find that depth now, not forcing it, not directing it, only allowing the breath to go where it goes, to open what it opens, to touch what it touches, and then to leave again on its own, carrying with it whatever it carries, releasing whatever has been waiting to be released, which is always more than we knew we were holding, always more than we were aware of. The release always surprising in its extent, the way the shoulders drop further than expected when you stop trying to hold them, the way the jaw loosens further than expected when you stop trying to hold it, the body always having been waiting to let go a little more, always having been ready, always knowing the way towards stillness before the mind has agreed to follow.